All right, let's get into our guest segment this week, member segment as we call it. We are going to be giving you our top 10 meanest games ever made that are not war games.
Our opinion, like there's obvious. That's right.
Yeah, we racked our brains to think of what games we think of when we think of games that are mean. And of course, when we say mean, we don't mean a game that actually makes the other player really feel bad, but feel bad within the accepted space of our game group. We're not actually trying to hurt each other in a real way that exists outside of the game.
And yet,
we hope that these scars haunt them forever and that they see my laughing face in their dreams.
Well, it's one of those things where like the memories that I have most of our game group are those where people have lost, their minds for that night.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful when somebody looks up and realizes what you've done and they say, "You're evil."
Yeah, no.
You are true evil.
Like I used to say, and I still say, the definition of a successful game night for Paul is when someone like absolutely fully invested loses their mind. And if that person is me, that is still a win. Like if someone's able to do that to me, I go like, well done. Well, I mean, like not in the moment, but in like when I'm driving home at like 1 o'clock, I go like, that was a good game night.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I've ranked mine. You've ranked yours. Shall we start with our tens? Well, number 10.
I let me give some context real quick. And so like ultimately this list came from DUNE Imperium, actually, because like I was thinking about how to the point DUNE Imperium is to what it does, and then I thought about how like we should do a segment about that, where like games that really just get to the meat of what it really is, and like sometimes what it really is not exactly what you think it's going to be. Like there's what the game is about, and there's what the game is about. And as I was making my list, I kept on going like, oh, actually, all the games I really care about are the mean games. And so but like there are some games that like I feel like should have honorable mentions. Like for me to be like K-less, which may show up on some other people's list. Innovation, Indonesia, Barrage, but more. Everyone says Diplomacy is the meanest game they've ever played. And I have never finished a game of Diplomacy, so I can't really say that. But if it's missing from our list.
I have never played a game of Diplomacy, which is probably crazy for people who know that I host a board game podcast.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make that note early on that there are a lot of mean games that don't make the list. Diplomacy is probably the one that is most notable. From our list, not to say, but truth be told,
this is a list of games we play that we think are mean.
Absolutely, but truth be told, I don't know who still plays Diplomacy. That's
sure there are people. Yeah, it's I think Tom would say it's best to play by email.
Sure.
But yeah, there's probably. I mean, I'm sure if you go on BGG, you'll find a lot of people still playing it.
Maybe, but there's we tried Diplomacy 2020. For one round. And ultimately, like in my research, I feel like there are
I can't say I haven't played Diplomacy because I did play one round of Diplomacy.
and I feel like there are a lot of gambits and like blah blah blah, and I wonder if it's moved into like this kind of chess maneuver. Chess thing where now it's all just a matter of the nuance of things. So like it's not exactly what we in the hobby really enjoy anymore. I don't know. Right. I don't know, but like I know that at one time it was the thing to play if you wanted to play any game. The adage is like, once you play Diplomacy, all games become Diplomacy.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, in terms of games where you would look at somebody across the table and think that they're evil, I would. Yeah, Diplomacy should be at the top of anyone's list, but it's not on either of ours.
No, it's not. So there you go. So yeah, top 10. Let's go like one by one. Like our list's probably very different.
Yeah. What is your number 10 meanest game?
Well, my number 10 meanest game is not a very. It's a filler game, and it's a game brought to us by listener of the podcast, David Gillison. and it's called Cockroach Poker.
Mm-hmm.
And it is basically a bluffing game. But and I won't need to go into the real intricacies of it, but like
It's liar's dice, right?
ish. But what makes it really great is that there is not one winner. There is only one loser. And what happens is the moment that there is just a little bit of blood in the water, everyone else gangs up on this person. And it is like it is the friendly, smiley game version of Lord of the Flies. And
no, it is true. It is the person who loses is the first person to lose even a little bit, and then they're just done.
That's right. And so, like, it is so fun to see, like, with a smile, everyone at the table turning into the most base, carnal monster towards one picky character.
Yeah.
So
that's really good.
Yeah. So Cockroach Poker. Well done, David Gilson.
Well done. My number 10 is Fort. Now, when I was thinking of this list, I was thinking not only of games that I think are the meanest, which you'll see more towards the top half, but also games that I think do mean things in really interesting ways that I hadn't seen before. And Fort is actually a good example of a deck builder that I really enjoy because it's very different. And this one aspect of it I just love, which is that all cards that you don't play that turn are placed above your board and can be taken by any other player at the end of their turn. And to me, there's something so fun of when you have to build up your little combo deck and you can't play both pieces of your combo this turn, and somebody just breaks your combo and takes that character just because they know that you need that combo. And where you find yourself in a position where you have no choice but to lose your most important card, and it's delicious.
And I will say there, like, with Fort, there's an aspect where you're complicit in your own demise.
Yeah, no, it's you built this combo, and it came about in a way where you legally can't play your combo this turn, and so you have to break your combo and put one of them in front. And that turn, you're just looking at your phone, pretending that you don't care, pretending that your most important card in the whole game isn't just sitting there, hoping nobody notices. And then it comes to Paul's turn, and they go, Matt, I know you don't want me to take that card. I know you're sweating and shaking inside right now, hoping that I haven't noticed that you put your most important card out there. And I just want you to know that I know that. And and that's a very good, fun, mean moment.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
What's your number 9?
Number 9 is Dune, because how could it not be? Dune Avalon Hill. There, as Tom would say, there is a treachery card deck. There are, the Harkonnens are remarkably mean. And
it's Dune Gale Force 9 now. They're the ones who own the own the brand now.
Oh, okay, yeah. And like ultimately what I really enjoy about that is like there are moments when everyone needs to like make an alliance, and ultimately you are forced into alliance with people who you maybe have been playing against the whole turn, the whole game actually, and like there's a certain cruelty about that, and the only reason why you are stuck with these people is because like if you don't, then the other alliance is going to wipe both of you out. And so it's this huge and these people may not be your friends in the next turn. So there's always this tension, this paranoia about working with people, and I think it really captures the meanness of all real intrigue. Like the cruelty of that. So I thought it deserved to be.
I would have thought if you had asked me what I thought Paul's top 10 would be, I would have put this in the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm surprised it's at 9.
It is because like I don't know if I thought enough about the list.
My number 9 meanest game is much like Fort, a game that I think does meanness in a new and interesting way. This is Architects of the West Kingdom. I like bog standard mechanics with cool twists on them. And Architects of the West Kingdom does a cool twist on worker placement, wherein at the beginning of the game, you have a giant pile of workers and you think it's never ending and you're never going to run out of workers. And you just throw them around like dollar bills. And then people start imprisoning your workers and capturing them. And you realize if you go to a place too many times, it becomes quite a juicy place for somebody to come and literally imprison your workers and then sell them to the jail for money. And then you have to go and free your workers and waste actions. And that can feel very mean and in a fun and interesting way.
Oh yeah, and it's within the other people's favor to do. At some point, you go like, oh, I need to really take all your meeples away and profit from them.
Well, and it becomes a cool thing like Agricola, where it's like there's 6 wood sitting there. I don't really need 6 wood right now, but I better take 6 wood. It's the same thing with your workers become that 6 wood at some point. It's like, well, Matt's gone there 5 times. If he goes there again, he's going to get so much stuff. I'm just going to take all his workers and get $1 each for them.
Yeah, so super fun. Number 8 for me is Bus. Now, Bus is a Splotter game, and
a lot of Splotter on this list.
And for me, like I've condensed them. Like ultimately, like Indonesia, forcing a merger, the worst. Or having to ship and like even though you don't want to because it's going to cost you money to ship. Like that all it's and you have like Greed Inc. and you have all these other
Splotter could just be called mean games.
There's always a mean aspect about Splotter. The reason why I pick Bus is because it gets to it quicker.
Yeah, instantly mean.
Basically, you're making some bus routes. You're trying to get people home or to the bar or to work, and the only problem is like the person next to you.
Right.
and it's at round 1 you're going like, oh, this is going to be fine, and by round 2, knife. And so Bus is my pick for my top Splotter game.
That's pretty great. My number 8 is Terraforming Mars, a game that isn't mean except for the 1 or 2 cards that are mean, and they are feel bad cards. It's just asteroid, boom. Who has 4 plants? You have 4 plants, Trey? Yeah, you don't have those 4 plants anymore. Why'd you do that to me? Here's my favorite thing about Terraforming Mars, though. It's totally optional. when anytime you play a card that has take that on it, the rules tell you that you could just choose not to, which to me is so mean, because that means, of course, you always should do it. It's always the correct thing. Like if you're playing to win, you want someone to have less of something, of course. But the fact that they leave it up to you to do just feels mean, because the other player goes, you don't have to do that. You don't, like, it doesn't benefit you at all for me to lose my 4 plants. And then you go, oh, I know. Yeah. You lost 4 plants, buddy. Move on. It's just mean. It makes you feel mean. And I think it's funny that they decided that it was optional, because if you don't do it, why didn't you do it? What are you doing?
No, Ben was telling me about your game with him and Trey and Tom, and ultimately he could not get.
They started an asteroid war.
Exactly. It just rippled throughout our Maria game, as far as him bitching about Trey.
Well, and in fact, that is the reason that it's optional, right? Is because you can go to that person. I'm not doing this to you so that you will not do it to me later. We have an agreement. And then the person goes, oh yeah, we have an agreement. And they just do it to you because they were trying to win.
Yep. No, it's farming in space and asteroids.
Yeah.
Number 7 for me is an oldie. And I've mentioned this game before in like games that create memories. It's Kremlin. And basically, suffice to say, it's a very farcical, and I think the hallmark of not at least most mean games, successful ones, or ones that are that I would put on my list, have a bit of whimsy, or you can laugh at the cruelty. Like there are probably games that are just no mean without laughing, and I think that doesn't make a very good mean game. Kremlin is one where you are basically trying to support the right guy at the right time in the Kremlin, and rather than go into all of it, it's just very backstabby. It's very you're causing cruelty to one another, but it's so funny. It's so funny, and like and not to say that cruelty and humor should be always linked, but I do think so. They should be in games, and this does it better than most, I think.
I just realized we played a good mean game recently that didn't make my list, but The King is Dead. That's a good mean game.
Yeah. That worked out.
Total mean game.
Worthy and honorable mention.
Absolutely. My number 7 is Agricola. You may not think that German farming in the 16th century is mean, but you would be wrong. Agricola is very mean because everybody wants to do the same things. Everybody wants to expand their house. Everybody wants to have more workers. Everybody wants to get their occupations on the board, and not everybody can do it. And so the game is all about doing the thing that benefits you the most while at the same time hurting your opponent the most. And every decision you make in Agricola has to be based on what is best for me. That is also the thing that's going to make everyone else groan the most. And that makes Agricola a very cutthroat and mean game.
Groaners, yeah, that's also a good quality of a mean game. Like like if you can cause your opponent or people to go, oh.
Yeah. Well, if somebody's like, I need 6 wood this turn in order to expand my house, and then somebody who's already expanded their house, who doesn't need to expand this turn, takes the wood, and you just go, oh, cool, I lost. Great. That's the end of my game. I hate you. Like that happens a lot in Agricola. Great. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for doing that. Yeah. No, that's my whole game.
And as the future world Agricola champion, you would know.
Yeah. I would know. I would know what it feels like mainly to do that to other people and never have it done to me.
Sure.
Number 6.
Number 6. This is a game that I would not have picked until we started playing it, like about Thanksgiving 2019, and that's Through the Ages.
Yes, Through the Ages can be mean.
And so, like Matt and I was in Terre Haute, Indiana, helping my mother-in-law with her hip surgery, and so we were. I was like distance gaming, which where everyone else was playing games live, and so Matt took pity on me. He was like, well, you should get Through the Ages, not to make you sound like dumb, but like, you should get Through the Ages, we can play blah blah blah. And
accurate impression.
And we kind of had our own little back and forth meta, and it was fine. And then we invited Alfred and Trey, and then it became
very mean.
Oh my god! Like and because when you're playing,
there's a real cockroach poker aspect to
absolutely. Yeah. It was so
the first person who's militarily weak is just going to get pillaged turn after turn after turn. War, and just drive you into the ground, and everyone is going to eat you alive.
What was interesting was, like, in a 2-player game, I didn't notice because, like, ultimately, I'm vulnerable. Matt attacks me. He gets his stuff, and then I bolster up. But like in a 3-player game, if I get behind the curve, Matt attacks me. Oh, well, then Alfred goes like, oh, well, since you're weak, I'm going to attack you too. And then Trey goes,
and then we're all jockeying, like, who's going to get to feast off of Alfred this turn? Like, no, I wanted to feast off of Alfred. Like, get back. It's my turn. It's my turn to steal all of his points.
And like, and you would say that, I mean, there definitely feel bad moments, but like, in a way, it's kind of self-inflicted because you got behind, we are. You
had the hubris to think you didn't need to improve your military every turn because, you were going to run away with a culture victory. Like,
absolutely. And so I've never had it where, like, where we played a lot, between let's see, November to, I think we played as deep into as like April. Like we're playing.
We probably played 50 games of it or something.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like, we're playing and I'd get a text from Trey like, it's your turn.
Yeah.
Just, it's your turn. And it was, but no matter how vicious, like, a feasting was, let's call it that, like, no one ever was like going like, oh, I don't want to play this game. It was always like, It was like, I got brutal.
Again?
Exactly. I got brutalized. Let's do it again.
I think we should fire that one up again.
Yeah, and the app is amazing. Like,
it is what all apps are compared to for me.
And
in terms of how multiplayer asynchronous works.
Absolutely. And I'm sure it works fine with BGA. BGA tends to have a pretty gold standard for automation, but like the app just pay for the app.
Well, because you can have it on your phone and it works really well.
Absolutely. So through the ages, that's one. It's an investment though. The game requires some study.
My number 6 is the first modern board game I ever played. It is Battlestar Galactica, and for one reason only, the airlock. That's it. Just being able to blast somebody out of the airlock.
Which is in the what you call it? Which is in the expansion, in the Pegasus expansion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, like,
but yeah, Battlestar Galactica can be a mean game of on purpose lying to your friends the entire time, and I think you will probably have a more refined crack-like version of this later on in your list.
Sure. Like, I remember Battlestar Galactica. This was where I saw the ranges of Tom's character in two instances. One, he was a Cylon, I was a Cylon. And we made this move. I go like, oh no, he's going to rat me out, and he does it. And I go like, oh, I know something about you. You know something about me. We're gonna destroy. And and that's Tom's cleverness and blah blah blah. But when I think of games where Tom like nearly crossed the line, it's this one game of Battlestar Galactica where Dimitri had to choose between me and Tom as the bad guy, and Dimitri chose Tom as the bad guy, which was, he was wrong. I was a Cylon, and Tom red-faced yelled at Dimitri like where, and it was so like when talking about losing your mind. This was a key example of that. And we talk about it afterwards. They go like, oh, I think Tom pushed it to the limit, like any further, then like it would be bad sportsmanship. But like it was so good. It was like it was the Olympic moment of my of my desire to have like someone lose their mind. Like you couldn't get better than this. This was the 3-star Michelin.
Right.
So yeah, Battlestar Galactica. Love it.
All right, we move into the top 5. What is your 5?
My number 5 is a game that doesn't get as much love as I would like. It's called Santiago. And ultimately, it's a game about, you know what? This is maybe the only farming game that I like. Because you're making potatoes, you're making stuff, but like...
you like Bonanza.
Sure. But in this particular game, the twist is that one person is gonna you should only play with 5, and one person is going to be what's called the canal overseer, and so this person has the choice of either feeding your crops or letting them turn into dust, and ultimately these people who you were once your friends, once fellow farmers, are now trying to convince you to go their route, so their crops don't die. In other words, once you're friends, now you are extorting them for water. and there is in each round this can change who becomes the canal overseer, but like ultimately, like what it really does, it forces people to really just play into that mafioso type, like hey, you're gonna give me this or you're so I really like that aspect of that.
I'm dying to play this game. Tom gifted me a copy of it, and I have yet to play it.
Oh, it's excellent.
My number 5, speaking of famous stories of near implosions at our board game table, is Eclipse. Eclipse, or more recently, the Eclipse New Dawn, is a Space 4X game that can get pretty mean. That can definitely have people ganging up on each other as you fight for the center of the board, and famously is probably the biggest near friendship ending fight that we've ever had at a board game between Tom and Dimitri. Tom seems to be the reoccurring character. A lot of these near friendship ending fights.
Well, for all of it, let's be clear. Tom is actually very calm for most times.
He really is,
yeah. Like I think
but he gets ganged up on a lot in these games.
Absolutely. Like I don't want to be
because he's good at them.
Absolutely, and ultimately, like he is not accustomed as a game master. He's not accustomed to being like thrown under the bus. Right. And so when people tend to do that or not believe him, in absolute terms, like I feel that he's vulnerable, and right. And the moment that we're referring to is Matt, having a fundraiser for
charity fundraiser,
and this is this is the game that we're playing, and Tom is losing his cookies because Dimitri goes like, "Oh, I think that that you're more of a danger than Paul is," and to be completely honest, Dimitri was right. He won the game. He analyzed the situation correctly, and because Tom either didn't see that or was just so blinded by the fact that Dimitri was going to damage his position, he got a little red faced. and another moment in the chronicles of this also I also lost my cookies on this game too. There was one time there was one time where Tom and I allied, and then Tom is not a person who enjoys betraying, but if it's too good, he will, and he just we teamed up, and then he just slaughtered. He was like a weed whacker, and I was playing Planta, so I was the Planta. He was just cutting me to pieces, and there was and I was upset, and there was a moment where I coined the phrase, "Well, that wasn't how I was taught." and so in our game group, there's occasions where when someone is losing, and that is the mantra. Well, that's not how I was taught. And
right, you claim that ignorance.
Yeah, and it was in my case true, but I remember that with fondness and smiles, because I'm driving back home. I go oh, that was cathartic on my part. I got all that energy out. I'm so angry. It's
amazing,
beautiful.
What is your number 4?
My number 4 is a game called Fresh Fish, and we talk about this game a lot. Once again, very under BG.
Also, a game I have never played.
Really? Well, yeah. No, it's a we talk about it as being a what's the word? Kind of a negative space game. Mm-hmm. But in that negative space aspect, there is. Of all these games, this one is probably the most an abstract. And what it is you're keeping all this stuff in your head because it's all theoretical until things have to be laid. And so now you're placing your cubes, and what we find that happens is I'm blocking you theoretically, and there comes this point where it's like watching Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura, 1 and 2 chess players in the world, talk about the present chess game, and 10 moves down, there's going to be a draw, and then one of them goes oh, I didn't see that move. And so in this game here, you get blocked in ways that someone does it and it's so mean, and it's not even on the board yet. It's all just oh, you destroyed me. 5 moves from now, I'm dead, and it's not. It's just so good. It's just so good in the how you can be completely destroyed without ever seeing it on the board yet.
Yeah, a lot of these mean games I haven't played with you guys. Maybe you guys don't want me involved in them or something.
Well, you are fragile.
Yeah, you know something about me I don't want to know. My number 4 is one of the ones you mentioned as sort of the prototype of when you think about mean games. But for me, my number 4 is Caylus, or Caylus 1303, the new version of it. The Bailiff is a quintessential board game Euro mean. You get to move the Caylus. I mean, you get to move the bailiff back and forth on the worker placement track and you can totally destroy somebody by deciding that the action that they wanted to take is no longer happening, because only actions before the bailiff will happen this turn.
And what's great about this game is like that is like it's one of the best parts of the Meanest, but the whole game is like pretty mean, and in this particular case here, this is where when I think of Dimitri melting down, this is where Trey and Dimitri had an agreement. Trey violated that agreement in Dimitri's eyes, and we had to stop play.
Wow.
Like Dimitri was going like, I gotta leave.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and later on, there was discussion of blood sugar, blah blah blah. But in the end, it was so. I count it as a win.
Yeah, Kalis is one of those games that people often give you the caveat of make sure you're playing this with people that you're all very comfortable with each other, because it can have a lot of feel bad moments.
Absolutely.
Number three.
This is one of my favorites. All these top three turns out to be some of my favorites, as you would expect. And it is the Estates. The Estates. It's basically build some stuff. It's but what really makes it great is like it's better to hurt people than to help yourself. And it's a bidding game. It has other aspects to it, like
auction game, a classic auction game.
Yeah, we talk about it in one of our episodes, so I won't bore you with that. But like, what it really does well is it makes you focus on hurting other people. And I know that sounds awful. First of all, I'm a lovely person.
Mm-hmm. You're not, but it's good to say that.
Exactly. But in the end, like you have to admire a game that really knows what it wants to be, and I think the veneer of the Estates is like, oh, here you're just a real estate developer, blah blah blah. But there's one rule that basically says and if you don't complete blah blah blah, these go negative. And it turns out that one rule is the crux of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, only two of these three rows are going to score, and one is going to be a negative score.
And so with that pivot, you wind up the game is completely different than what it purports to be because of that one rule, and it's so cutthroat. Yeah. Anyway.
Yep. You may see that on somebody else's list coming up.
Ooh.
My number 3 is Food Chain Magnet. To me, yes, all splatters belong on this list, but for me, the meanest of them is Food Chain Magnet, because there are few and this is a good part of mean game ruling is it's your fault if this happens to you. And Food Chain Magnet, it is your fault if you allow somebody to do this horrible thing to you, which is steal all of your clients. And by blanketing the town in flyers that you've flown down from your airplane advertisement campaign, and you've ruined everyone's life. And I hate you forever for doing it. There are a few games that make me feel more upset at myself than Food Chain Magnet, because it's always your fault when you
lost
have to throw out all your food and you lost all your customers.
Yeah, throwing out your food is what's tough. That's for me. That's really tough.
Yep. That is Food Chain Magnet, number 3. We're in the top 2. What's your number 2, Paul?
I think here's where people who have known me on this podcast would guess this would be number 1, but it's not. And that is the Resistance Avalon. And we've talked a lot about this game on the podcast, so I'm not going to really...
Some would say too much.
Many. Many will say too much. But ultimately, any game that forces you to lie to some of your best friends without remorse is got to be up there. And when we talk about games that mean games that don't hurt friendships, I feel like this is a game that came the closest between you and me. That time where basically I was a bad guy. I told Matt that I was Merlin, and Tom had to choose between me and Tom was going, Paul's the bad guy. And I go, no, Matt, I'm Merlin. And he had to choose, and he chose me. And after like the good guys lost, Matt like leans back and says, I think you've hurt our friendship. I don't think like as a person, Paul, I don't think I can trust you.
Yeah. It was rough. Not as rough as the time where I winked at you.
Oh yes,
that you know that I was Merlin, and then you quickly said to the table, "Guys, Matt just winked at me. I think he's a spy." And I was like, "What would you do?"
This is a con too. That was so funny. Yeah. So we're playing it with a bunch of stranger. Matt makes a move, like trying to save us, and I go like, I think he's trying to trick me.
It's called overthinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Number 2 for you, buddy.
My number 2 is 1830, or really any 18XX, but it's hard to get meaner than 1830 in any game where you can dump a company on another player and have it sink them to the bottom of the ocean like 1,000-pound anchor. That is a mean game, and that is exactly what 18XX can do. Specifically, the original mean 18XX game, 1830. Yeah, it's often the right thing to do is to bankrupt a company and then force it onto another shareholder by getting in the right position in turn order where you can sell your stocks and then thus make somebody with a minor sharehold now become the major shareholder and the president. And now they have a company with no trains, and they have to buy trains, and they have to spend their own money, and then the game literally ends because they went bankrupt, and that's the end of the game.
Well, on a side note, like this, this reminds me of another game on the brain that I forgot to mention. It's called Wall Street versus Reddit investors.
Yeah. It's a crazy game. It's a chaos bomb.
It is quite like, this idea that like, I mean, however you feel about it, like you have to admire the tactic unlock that the Reddit investors chose to do. Like, as far as like, let's pump up this stock, and everyone who is short it, could be in theory, like, liable for infinite amount of money. I mean, that's a mean game. That's a mean game.
We've come to the final meanest game of all time, Paul. What is your number 1 meanest game?
And this is I don't know if it's going to be a surprise, but like it is Age of Steam.
Wow.
Yeah. It's I don't think it's a surprise that like that train games are up there. Train games in general are mean. I picked Age of Steam because not only, and then Tom and I have the same viewpoint on this, and I think most people would have. It's like, not only are you encouraged to really be mean to the other players, but the game itself is mean to you all. It is just, with always having to pay for your stocks and like, progressive taxes, like it creates an environment where
Martin Wallace is being mean in this game.
Absolutely. And you're asking for it. And you come to play and you're asking for it. And the reason why you're playing it is because if you can just get over that plateau, if you can just make $0, that you're winning, and you're like, oh, I've accomplished something.
Your whole game is just trying to get out of debt.
For the longest time, I could not deal with it. I could not deal with staying in debt for 2/3 of the game. That was just an impossibility for me because of, if it's not just a feel bad moment, it's a feel bad experience. But like once I was able to compartmentalize that, I go like, oh, there's a certain genius in this game on how every decision, like, you take locomotive, well, I'm going to take first move, and now like, so there's counter move, and it plays so differently with each map or player account. It has, I wouldn't say infinite, but it has a great variety of the different type of meanness that can happen. Whereas like, all the other games that I have described today, they all have a very specific meanness that they lean into. Whereas Age of Steam, there are a lot of different ways to be not nice to the people that you love, that your friends. And I haven't seen anyone really, at least in our group, there's a lot of laughter about it when it happens. You're like, oh, groans. That's it. There are so many groan moments in Age of Steam. It's beautiful.
It is a groan simulator. My number one is your number three. It is The Estates. To me, this is just a game designed to only let you simulate emotional violence against your friends. Yeah, I mean, just the fact that it's all about it is feel like 18xx in the sense that you are trying to dump the worst company on somebody else, and each potential row where you're building things is a company in the game, and only 2 of those companies are going to score, and one of them is going to sink people, and you're trying to make sure that, you know, in this awful game of musical chairs, you're not the one stuck on the dead row that's negative points, while meanwhile trying to make sure that everyone else is stuck there. It is truly mean and delicious, and I think all mean truly games that are as mean as this should only last 45 minutes.
Sure.
And that's what The Estates does.
Well, and you know, something about The Estates that like we didn't mention. It's like a losing score could be negative 15, and a winning score could literally be the least negative or like 1.
Oh yeah, no, we've had games before where it's whoever had the least negative score. Absolutely. So
yeah, come on, it's beautiful. You gotta appreciate for its beauty.
Absolutely, that was fantastic, Paul. That was our top 10 meanest games of all time. Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.